So we're here with Friederike Ernst, and we're going to speak about some of the technology behind DeSci. My first question is, so when we release a drug to market, we usually have to show that it's both safe and that it works, that it's efficacious. So if we look at some of the technologies that enable us to decentralize science, do you think, as of now, they're both safe and efficacious?
Yes and no. So I think there are components of it that are safe and efficacious, but actually claiming that of every single part, because I mean it's permissionless, right? So anyone can kind of deploy new modules or new apps and new protocols. So yeah, I mean we have to make sure that they are safe, and I mean there are industry standards around audits and kind of yeah, even to a certain. I mean there's also computerized ways to kind of find bugs, but yeah, we have to do that for every single component for sure.
But do you think there's any major technical flaws that we should really address before we really scale up and roll out DeSci more widely?
It depends on where, right? So basically, I think one needs to remember that not all blockchain systems are created equal, and basically, if you deploy a system, you kind of have to ask yourself, what am I optimizing for? And obviously, there are trade-offs. So if you're optimizing for credible neutrality and kind of making sure you can't be deplatformed, you want to go to a different chain than if you're looking for low fees forever.
So you speak about credible neutrality as a key design principle. Can you give a brief definition of that?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. So if you think back about why we've actually started working with blockchains, it's kind of to give a disjunct group of people the ability to coordinate with each other without having to trust each other. And building on blockchain technology is actually a lot harder than if you were to just build it on cloud infrastructure. So if you want to go build the same thing on AWS, it'll be faster and cheaper to do that. So the main reason why we started building on blockchains is to kind of have that permissionless innovation. So as I said earlier, so something that kind of belongs to no one belongs by default to everyone, and that's a wonderful thing. Obviously, you have to do a lot of maths in the background to make it work. But then taking this technology and actually having it run by a consortium of say 5 people or 10 people, this kind of detracts much of that early value proposition that we actually went in it for. So basically that kind of takes away the credible neutrality, because if there's a list of 10 players of whom you have to corrupt 5 and you know exactly who they are for the thing to break, that's no longer credibly neutral and they can collude against you. Yeah, so basically having a credible neutral platform to me means knowing that all players on that platform are created equally and have the same rights, and no one is there to kind of be the deplatformer of participants.
Have you heard of the veil of ignorance?
I have not. What is it?
It's like a concept in moral justice from the 1970s, actually like popularized by John Rawls, and he like places us in this theoretical position where we were to design like a social contract or the rules of like social allocation, and then we would have to act as if under a veil of ignorance about everything we are, any groups we belong to, and only under those conditions could we really make fair decisions. So I'm kind of seeing similarities in when you're designing, like I guess, incentive mechanisms and governance, you would have to almost be blind and invisible as to what age, what nationality, and everything you are. Otherwise, you'll implicitly bias, like more rewards to that group.
Yeah.
So should we, like kind of design these systems as if under a veil of ignorance?
I absolutely believe so. So I think this has been a discussion in the ecosystem that's been going on for a while, whether validators, for instance, should be allowed to be opinionated, whether they should be allowed which transactions they're putting onto the blockchain, whether they should be allowed to exclude transactions, and so on. And I think this is a level of the protocol where really it should be infrastructure. It should be like optical fiber, right? The optical fiber doesn't ask, what do these bits mean? Do I really want to pass this on? It should be infrastructure. It should just be there for everyone. And then, of course, we can build systems on top. So what often gets conflated is credible neutrality and censorship resistance. So, and I actually much prefer the term credible neutrality, because I think even in an open and free society, there are things which, as a society, we can decide to censor, right? So no one would kind of advocate for, I don't know, I'll take something truly child abuse or child pornography, right? No one would say like, oh, but it's free speech. But I mean, this is something that should be made as a collective decision as a society, and should not be placed on the validators to decide which transactions are okay and which are not okay. And that's what credible neutrality means to me.
Do you think Web3 or these systems are a bit like more vulnerable to bad agents than, for example, the way traditional science works today is?
No, I think they're less at risk here, just because in Web3 we always design systems with adversarial thinking. So basically, you design something, and then you turn the table around and say, if I have this system and it's here, how would I break this? Right? So basically, and you always have to assume that everyone else is malicious. And I think this kind of level of adversarial thinking in terms of systems design is very unique to Web3. So yeah, I don't think so.
Yeah, that makes sense that this perspective is useful. And maybe switching gears, because you've been a postdoc and you've worked in traditional academic institutions, and we say a lot of their shortcomings, with reason. But do you think there's some things that traditional science did right that we should carry over when we're trying to guide how we organize DeSci?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think almost all scientists are in it for the right reasons, right? You're not in it for the money. You're not in it for the fame. You're in it for the joy of finding things out. And I think this is something that should be carried over to DeSci. And while I'm a friend of kind of having economically viable systems, I think kind of monetizing everything or putting a value on everything actually often detracts from intrinsic motivation. And I think kind of giving people ownership over something and having them feel that this is the research problem they are burning for, despite the fact that basically if you step back, everyone's research question is really tiny compared to the larger picture, right? It's just a tiny piece of the puzzle, and people still end up feeling incredibly passionate about it, and not because they're motivated by money, just because traditional research institutions have been really good at instilling these values into people. And I mean, you see that super smart and ambitious people go into research rather than make much more money elsewhere. And I think this level of idealism, this would be a shame to lose.
Okay, and lastly, is there one thing in the DeSci space you wish more people paid attention to and you want to draw their attention towards?
Yeah, so I think there's been a lot of attention on funding and data. I think more attention should be paid to publishing, because publishing is such a large part of an academic's activity. And I think there's lots of opportunities that kind of get squandered for exchanging information. So for instance, when I wrote a paper, I think on average maybe 20 people read it closely. And I would have given an arm and a leg for those people's comments, right? So basically, why can't you comment on specific sections of a paper and have other people upvote them and downvote them and kind of answer questions? If I read a paper that maybe 20 other people in the world are as interested in as I am, I kind of want to be in a position where I can interface with them directly and kind of ask questions and have them answer questions, kind of like maybe like a Reddit style comment thing. And I think I would love it if there were more projects around the academic publishing industry.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great, really nice.
Is that okay?
Yeah, great.
Good. Thank you for your insights.
Fantastic.